Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Achrei Mos, and perhaps it's an appropriate portion to coincide with Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was celebrated this past Thursday. The story of Achrei Mos is the two sons of Aaron die, and as the Torah describes, Bekarvasim Lifnei Hashem, as they became close to God. And as Moshe said to Aaron back when it happened in the portion of Shmini, Bikrovaya Kadesh, with those that are close to me, I will be sanctified. And the idea is that they died al pi kiddush Hashem, through the sanctification of God's name. Without going into the details of the story, it's just important to note that they were not people who were evil, wicked people, but rather they died for whatever reason, but they died while they were trying to bring something on the altar before God. And maybe what's more important is their father Aaron's response. It says, Vayidom Aaron. Aaron was silent. And there's two interpretations of his silence. One is that he was silent, he was quiet, he accepted, he didn't react at all. The other is that he did have a reaction, but he suppressed it. He started to cry, he started to have these emotions, but he realized to move on, he has to accept. And when we talk about the Holocaust, I think we have to think about not only the past, but also the future. My father used to always say that it was very dangerous for Judaism to focus on just the Holocaust. We can't define our Judaism by the fact that we were killed and that we have enemies and that we were persecuted. Those are important facts of our history. We should never forget it. And I don't suggest that we should ever forgive those that did these terrible atrocities. But we also have to look forward to how we're going to define ourselves and, in a general way, how we're going to define Judaism. And I was fortunate on this past Wednesday night to go to Bass River, Nova Scotia, a very small town. I went with Rabbi Ellis from Halifax. And in a small town where there probably are no Jews or maybe one or two Jews, they had a very moving memorial to the victims of the Holocaust. And what it showed me is something that I believe in very, very dearly, is that there are good people in this world. There are people that care. And of course, there are wicked people. All you have to do is read the news and see that there are many people who are open to murder, to destruction, to killing, to greed, and to a quest for power, which does not stop even when other people's lives are in danger. We know that exists, but there are so many good people in the world, and our job is, I think, to focus on making sure we are an Arla Hashem, Arla Goyim, that we're a light unto the nations, that we show that Judaism has more to offer than just being persecuted. As it says in Isaiah, which we read in the Haftarah this past week on Pesach, that we are waiting for a time not only where the lion will lie down with the sheep, but a time when Mala Aretz Deya Kamayim Machasim Liyam, that the earth will be filled with knowledge like water covers the sea. And it's talking about knowledge of God, but it's not only knowledge of God. Knowledge of God is the ability to emulate God and to focus on the attributes of God of mercy. Hashem, we say, Kel Rachum v'chanun erech apayim v'rav chesed. God who is merciful and gracious, long in anger, and has much kindness. That's what we have to emulate. And that's what we have to, we have to make sure that we develop that within ourselves, within our children, within our future generations. And I'd like to quote Philip Reitman, who was a Holocaust survivor who died just a few years ago. And till his dying days, he said, we have to have love and not hate. That no matter how much we suffered, and in particular, as an individual, he suffered greatly. But he says, it doesn't pay to hate. It doesn't pay just to look for revenge. We have to be wary. We have to be careful. We have to defend ourselves. We have to make sure that we don't allow ourselves to be persecuted once again. And we don't have to forgive, as I said before, we don't have to forgive those that did these atrocities. There was no reason to forgive them, really. They must be punished. They must be remembered as the wicked people that they were. But moving forward, we don't necessarily have to have hate. Just as an example, after World War II, the United States built Germany and Japan back up to a point where they're no longer our enemies, but rather our allies. And that's because there was no point in revenge at that point. The war was won, the enemy was defeated, and now we have to look forward to the future. Does it always work? No. We see that in the world today. It doesn't always work. A lot of attempts at building up democracies in other countries have failed, and they still will fail in many instances. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be promoting the love of fellow human beings. And we should have faith in the fact that all human beings are B'Tselem Elokim, are created in the image of God. So as Jews, we have to be careful. We have to defend ourselves. We have to make sure that generations that come should not be subject to the murderous intent of our enemies. But we also have to make sure that Judaism is not defined by hate. Judaism is not defined by our suffering. We remember it, but we move forward. We build towards the future. As an example, the March of the Living takes people and teenagers and 20-year-olds to the concentration camps to make sure that we understand what our history was. But then they go to Israel. And in Israel, they see that there's a future, that we could build towards a future and focus on ourselves as a people, focus on ourselves as a people of God who are here to make sure we promote the message of love in this world. Good Shabbos.